Okay, let's go to page 81, and this is section 6.4. This is how to do coefficient and roots. Okay, so first we're going to write a root equation. Whenever you have polynomial, like if you have a polynomial, the root equation would be, so for the second degree would be x squared minus r1 plus r2, x plus r1, r2 equal to 0. Okay, so notice there's no coefficient, and this is very easy to remember. Okay, if you notice the pattern, so all this, for example, the coefficient, this would be, taking none of the root at a time. Okay, so none at a time, you take one at a time, you take two at a time. Okay, and the sign would be plus. You always start with plus, so it would be positive, negative, positive, negative. So the next equation, for example, the cube equation would be, okay, so it would be plus, so minus r1 plus r2 plus r3 x squared, so plus minus plus. So this is taking none at a time, take one at a time. Now you have to take two at a time. So it would be r1 r2 plus r1 r3 plus r2 r3. Okay, so you can start with r1. When you run out of the list, you start with r2. Okay, and so this would be x. So it would be plus minus plus minus. The next one would be, so none at a time, one at a time, two at a time, three at a time. So it would be r1, r2, r3 equal to 0. Okay? Now, the fourth power, again, just follow the same pattern. You're going to get x to the 4 minus, okay, r1 plus r2 plus r3 plus r4, x to the 3. Okay, so plus minus will be plus. So you take two at a time. So it would be r1, r2. I'm going to go down. Okay, plus r1, r3 plus r1, r4. So once I exhaust the r1, then I go to r2. So it would be r2 plus r2, r3 plus r2, r4. Once I exhaust the r2, I go to the r3. Okay? So that would be the coefficient for the x squared. Okay? So you can, so plus, minus, plus. Next one would be minus. Okay. So now, so take none at a time, take one at a time, take two at a time. Now you're going to take three at a time. And when you take three at a time, it's easier to think of which one you don't want. So you start with r1, r2, r3. Okay? So you're missing r4. Then you're going to missing r3 next. Okay? Then you're going to missing r2 next. Then you're going to missing r1 next. Okay? So you can, so all this will go down in order, right? X to the 4, x to the 3, x to the 2, x to the 1. Okay? And it's plus, minus, plus, minus, plus. Okay? And this would be taking none at a time, one at a time, two at a time, three at a time. Now we're going to get 4 at a time. And that's it. Okay? So again, once you know the pattern, you don't have, it's very easy to remember. And same thing, keep going. You very rarely, most of the time you deal with the cube. Once in a while you deal with 4. In computation, you probably see the fourth power more often. But you almost probably very rarely, almost never see higher, like 5 or higher. Okay, very rarely. So once you know this, you're in good shape. Okay? Okay. So let's go and do some examples. Page 82, example 6-9. It says find the constant term of the quadratic. Okay, now you have to be careful. It's quadratic, it's not quadratic. Okay, it's quadratic means a fourth power. So you're going to have a r1 equal to 2 minus I, and I'm going to call this r3 equal to 2 plus square root of 3. So what would be the constant term? Constant term, so right over here, okay, you have the quadratic equation, the fourth power. So your constant term is the product of the roots. Is this one here. So this is what I mean by constant term. The number, so like this over here, this is your constant term. So that is your last one right over here. So this is the constant term. This is the linear term. This is the quadratic term. This is the cubic term. This is the quadratic term. Okay? So when you ask for the constant term, you're looking for these. So you're looking for the product of all 4 roots. Okay, so again, remember, if it's polynomial with a rational coefficients, that means if it's an I, it must be conjugates. That means R2 must be equal to 2 plus I. And R4 must be equal to 2 minus square root of 3. Okay? So now, so when you're going to multiply everything together, R1, R2, R3, R4 will equal to, so you do not multiply this first. Never ever. You always multiply the conjugate. Okay? So R1, R2, when you multiply conjugate, you just multiply the corresponding part. So 2 times 2 will give you 4. Minus times plus will give you minus. I times I is negative 1, so this becomes plus 1. Okay, over here, 2 times 2 give you 4. Plus times minus give you minus. Square root times square root of 3 times square root of 3 give you 3. Okay, so this will equal to 5 times 1, so equal to 5. Okay, and that's it. Okay, again, if you know your theorems, know your equation, it's very simple. Okay. Okay, let's go to the next one. Let's go to page 83, example 6-10. Okay, if the 3 roots are given, then what is value of 2c minus a times b? Okay, so you got x to the 4 plus ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. The roots are negative 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so what we're going to do is, again, we're going to write that equation. So you got x to the 4, so it'd be plus minus r1 plus r2 plus r3 plus r4, x to the 3, okay? And plus minus plus. And so take one at a time, take 2 at a time, so it'd be r1, r2, r plus r1, r3 plus r1, r4 plus r2, r3 plus r2, r4 plus r3, r4. Okay, times x squared. So plus minus plus minus, and the cube would be 3 at a time. So it'd be r1, r2, r3 plus r1, r2, r4 plus r1, r3, r4, r2, r3, r4, x. So, okay, so plus minus plus minus plus r1, r2, r3, r4 equal to 0. Okay, now if you notice you match it up, there's no cube. Okay, there's no cube part. That means r1 plus r2 plus r3 plus r4 match up with equal to 0. Okay, so you substitute all this into here. So you got negative 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus r4 equal to 0. So this will give you 4 plus r4 equal to 0. So r4 equal to negative 4. Okay, so that's an important information. So right away, we can see that the next root is negative 4. Okay, now once we found all the roots, now we can solve for A, B, C. Okay, C is easier to find. Okay, but let's work it through. So A is a square, so A equal to this over here. Okay, so this your R1, R2, R3, R4. So A is going to be equal to negative 2 plus R1, R3 would be negative 3 plus R1, R4 would be 4 plus R2, R3 so it would be 6 plus R2, R4 be negative 8 plus R3, R4 negative 12. Okay, so A, you do all that, you're going to get negative 15. Okay, for B, B is the near term match with these. Okay, so again, you come over here, so it'd be R1, R2, R3, so it'd be this 3, so it'd be negative 6 plus, so next one would be this 3, so it'd be plus 8 plus next 3 would be 12. Next 3 would be negative 24. Okay, so B is equal to negative B. You have to watch, be careful. Notice this is positive, this is negative. Okay, so actually it's negative B. Okay, so this equal to negative B. So watch for that. So negative b is equal to negative 10. So b equal to 10. Yeah, so make sure you match the sign. So watch very carefully for the negative and positive. Okay? Okay, c, just multiply all this together. So c equal to 24. So now we can find 2c minus ab equal to 2 times 24 minus a times b. So this is equal to 198. Okay? So you can see how useful this root equation is. So super important. Okay.